Good evening, Commissioners. It's 6:30, and I'll call the EDC meeting on April 12th to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Sahil?
Here.
Ms. Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Winchester?
Here.
Ms. Ream? Here. Mr. Leonetti?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Condon has been excused. Thank you.
Thank you. I get approval of the March minutes, please. A motion to approve the March minutes. Just a reminder, we're looking at the minutes, waiting for a motion to approve the minutes. Did everybody read them? Thank you, Mr. Miller. The second, Ms. Sullivan. Did anybody have any comments for modifications? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Next is disclosures. I'll start with Mr. Winchester. You have any disclosures tonight? Nope. Okay, thank you. Ms. Sullivan, disclosures? Nope. Mr. Sahil?
No.
Great. Ms. Morse?
I was absent at the previous meeting and will abstain from voting on the consent agenda approval.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ream?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Thank you. And I'll disclose, just as before, the cases on tract 11 and 12 as discussed before I was excused. I don't think, I'll leave it up to the board if we need to bring that back up. It was mentioned in the staff pack, or in the case packet. It is not part of this hearing, but is an adjacent site that... Hearing and seeing nothing, nobody has a problem. Thank you. Consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Ms. Ream. Second. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I'm good.
Great, thank you. Does anybody like to pull anything from that? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you. There's no unfinished business, regular agenda. There is nothing, and so we'll go on to public hearings. And case number 2017-0045, Cook Inlet Housing Authority Major Site Plan Review for the Creekside Tract 10 Mixed-Use Project. I'll read the process real quick. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meetings is: 1, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Number 2, persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Urban Design Commission Rules of Procedure. 2A, petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when time has been reserved. 2B, representatives of groups, community council, PTAs, etc. have 5 minutes, and 2C, individuals have 3 minutes. Number 3, when your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. Number 4, an individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolutions, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. And now if we could have staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The case is a major site plan review for a proposed 18 residential unit mixed-use building for Creekside Plaza. The petitioner proposes to construct a 3-story, 22,600 square foot mixed-use building with ground floor retail and office space and an 18-unit residential units on the second and third floors. This property is located at the northwest corner of Creekside Center Drive and Muldoon Road. Access to the track will be from Creekside Center Drive. The special limitations in Creekside design standards dictate the development requirements in the Creekside Town Center. The site is subject to several provisions, which are Title 21, conditional use standards for residential planned unit developments from the old Title 21. Also, there's an assembly ordinance it's subject to. There's also a Planning and Zoning Commission resolution it's subject to. And it's also subject to development and design guidelines. The project meets most of those requirements. If you've read through the packet, I'm sure you have, they comply with nearly everything. The only ones of note are those conditions on page 28 and 29 of the packet. And just to clarify, on condition number 4, trees and shrubs must be evenly distributed along the length of the planting bed. That only applies to the L2 type landscaping, otherwise known as buffer landscaping, which is along the Muldoon Road. And I do also want to mention that there was an assembly ordinance that amended standards for mixed-use development, and this site is subject to that amendment that occurred last night. And when I wrote the staff packet, I wrote it with the understanding that it would be passed by the Assembly, and what it involves is the amount of window area on the first floor of buildings and then the subsequent floors above it, and it reduced the amount of window area that they had to have along the length of the building, and the project does comply with the new ordinance. Also want to mention that approximately 2 weeks ago, Tyler Robinson met with the planning department along with his design team for the project to discuss a couple of issues, and they involve the conditions 4 and 6. And number 6 I'll speak about a little bit. In the development and design guidelines, there's part of it that says, as the condition 6 reads, provide pedestrian open space that has landscaping as a visual barrier from the parking lot. They've placed some of their open space in what is the fire lane, and they weren't able to put any landscaping between that open space area and the parking lot. It was meant to, if you have an open space and you have seating there, that if you're outdoors enjoying that space, that so you wouldn't look out at a parking lot. But given their situation being it's a fire lane, it's impossible to provide landscaping in that area. And after much discussion with over this issue, staff is of the opinion that we are okay with number 4 and 6. Tyler is going to speak a bit more about those when he gets up to make his presentation. But after Tyler speaks, if the commission has any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer those.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question from Ms. Sullivan.
The plans do not reflect what it's in the site, and they don't have north arrows, and it's hard to understand.
The site design?
Yes. So the site design has a different shape than the first floors, and then they don't have north arrows. So I was having difficulty.
Could you reference sheets just for clarification? Which sheets are you talking about?
Oh, there you go. Okay. I get it now.
Is that page 122?
I lost that one.
There you go. That's the,
Okay, there you go.
okay.
I get it. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
That site plan was I don't know why they gave us that, but it's for like 8 and 9. This is basically 10.
Okay.
I know I was confused.
Still, okay, so north is up.
Yes, not even what's there.
Okay.
It's not even what's there. So previously,
Do you have any other questions, Ms. Sullivan?
yeah, just really quick.
Go ahead.
That confusion was there was a site plan presented that had to do with lots 8 and 9 from Kunstpfeffer Bettis? Yes. And that has nothing to do with this other than just for information, correct?
Just for information,
Right.
it's the two buildings that are just north of this site.
Right, I know, but it was stuffed in there, and so we were looking at that, trying to figure out how that...
Yeah, I
So-
do refer to it in the staff report.
Yeah, I understand, we just missed it. Okay, thanks, just clarifying, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'd alluded to the sheets that were laid on the table tonight, and alluded also to the fact that the conditions 4 and 6 were basically answered with the sheet that was laid on the table.
Yes, I think on 4, they're asking for a revised condition, and then on condition 6, they're asking that that be deleted.
Okay, thank you. And so the rendering that's laid on the table is an updated landscape drawing, and the other adjacent, correlating landscape sheets don't respond. So the intention is that it will be updated and then it will not be brought back before the commission, right?
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
The rendering that was laid on the table is what is now current, and the current landscape and site plan, and the subsequent L101 and or L201 and L202 are now outdated and will have additional trees presumably, but it's not indicated if there's more shrubs.
I think, let me just check. The landscape plan that you'll be approving is the landscape plan in the packet on page 125. I think the handout that you all received tonight was just, an illustration to, that Tyler may be speaking to.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Nope, great, thank you. The petitioner could come forward and state your name for the record and start your presentation, that'd be great.
Thank you. Good evening. Tyler Robinson with Cook Inlet Housing, Chair and Commissioners, and if I could reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal. Thank you for hearing the site plan review this evening for Track 10. You've previously heard and approved the site plan approval for Tracks 11 and 12, and we have built the developments on Tracks 8 and 9. They're not exactly what is shown in your packet. That was actually an even previous version, but what is built is generally consistent with the site plan there. Track 10, as you know, is the last effectively tract on the south side of the creek in the Creekside Center that has not either been approved or constructed. And so in planning and siting this development, clearly we are working off of the existing developments on 1112, the townhouses to the west, and the new multifamily and mixed-use buildings to the north, Tracks 8 and 9. We believe that we have met the required connections both for automobile access into the site as well as pedestrian access. Our general scheme is to bring pedestrians internal to the town center and walk them along those tracks, along those buildings on the west side, eventually connecting to a bridge that exists on the creek now. The bridge is set, but the aprons are not poured, and that would gain pedestrian access to the north of the town center site. And also those sidewalks clearly connect to the sidewalks along Creekside Drive. We believe there's access to the bus stop on Muldoon Road, again, through the existing driveway between 8 and 9, and then you would come internal to the site, or if you wanted to cross over Muldoon, you would do so at Creekside. The building is a mixed-use building, but really it's only a partial mixed-use building. The mixed-use portion, the retail and commercial portions are on the ends of the buildings, and we've attempted to emphasize those both at Creekside and at the northern end. We are working on a business use on that southern end, and we don't have a specific user for the north end. The lobby then is between those two, and then there's a variety of sort of residential support spaces on the ground floor, including, I think now we actually have a small workout space. There are additional lobbies for tenants on the second and third floors, where you see the elevations, the glazing on the west side, that opens up into seating areas and lobbies. As Ms. Ferguson said, it's always a challenge to design projects in this part of town because you're dealing not only with the Creekside guidelines and the ordinance, but Title 21 guidelines, which really were not in effect when those guidelines were written, right? So you're sort of retroactively making sure that they all work together. The two conditions that we'd like to speak to, and I can answer more questions, are provided on the one-pager. Try to provide that for your ease. Number 4, really related to the clustering. We believe that in both the ordinance and in the design guidelines itself, it talks about the ability to cluster landscaping so as to actually provide visual breaks into the town center and not buffer it. That sort of runs counter to the requirement for buffer landscaping that we have along the Muldoon roadside. So what we're asking for is the ability to, what we feel is better comply with the design guidelines by clustering our shrubs and trees as depicted on the rendering that you have in back of that on the Muldoon side. So really load them up in the middle of the building, where on the ground floor is really not active uses, and allow the visibility to what effectively are retail or business uses on the ends. The other condition, I think Ms. Ferguson described it. I would just point out that the narrative for it is on page 24 of the staff packet, and the section of the design guidelines actually reads, pedestrian open space should have landscaping that is a visual barrier from vehicular traffic and parking lots. When we started out, we had that as open space with the intent that fire would be dealing with any emergencies from either Muldoon or Creekside. They informed us that they would not fight the fire from there. So we had to measure hose lengths by providing basically a grassed, paved fire access on the north end of the building, so in the place where we have our open space. We still think that this is quality open space that serves both buildings, the building to the north as well as this building. There's 60 feet roughly between the two buildings, so this is not like a little 15-foot sliver. There will be benches provided. It will be grassed. There is landscaping both to the north of the fire access area and along the foundation of the building, and landscaping towards Muldoon Road. We just simply cannot place landscaping on the parking lot side because we need to maintain that for fire access. That's really the only deal killer that we have as conditions, if you will. And I think with that, I would note that I'm here with members of our team as well as a representative from Northern Bank, who's the current owner of Track 10. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. You have 4:39 left for rebuttal. Do we have any questions for Mr. Robinson? Mr. Winchester.
Thank you very much. It's an exciting project. Just a quick question on that paved fire lane. Are you required to plow that?
I'm pretty sure we'll be required to plow it, yes.
Yeah. So that's going to be a plowed grass area. Difficult to maintain.
Yeah, it's difficult to maintain. We also looked at it as a paved area, providing that would support a fire apparatus was challenging. You know, where we placed the trees, my understanding is fire really wants us to sort of really designate the lane, you know, really clearly for them. So that's kind of how that came about, really aligning where that access is. So
is it says grass paved fire lane. I mean, is it like pavers with grass in between it? Is it?
What do I call that? It's structural support under the grass, right? So you won't see the structural support. It'll look like lawn. I don't know the name of that. Geoplastic, geogrid.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
It's just, I mean, I see the grass getting destroyed and not maintained because it's really hard to maintain grass as a plowed year-round fire lane. I mean, it's just a suggestion of, you know, some form of paver with grass or something that's going to look nice in 2 years. I'm not going to make it a requirement. I'm just discussing that as a suggestion because just making it grass with, I mean, understand the support of the fire lane, got that,
right.
Whatever. But if it's a grass mat on top of that and you're plowing it year round, it's dead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's the first one that we will have built into a development.
And you find it doesn't work and you get to replace it, but I'm
Right.
suggesting maybe look at that more clearly because my experience personally has been that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, what we were looking for just from an open space standpoint, just so you know, we have those senior buildings to the north. We have a number of seniors who have small pets. They like to come out and have just a really quick outside time, right? So we thought it would actually be a pretty convenient space. Mm-hmm. There's other places in the town center for longer walks, and so the only other challenge was if it was hardscape, building the hardscape to actually support the fire apparatus. At this point, we're just not sure we have the funding for it, but I appreciate the concern. It's a bit of a dilemma. It was a surprise as we went through the process that that's where we'd have to...
It looks like a surprise, and sorry to hear that, and because I think it would make a better statement as a grass. I mean, not disagreeing with you. It's just that if you're going to plow it, I think it's going to be a real. In other words, whatever you do, you're going to get to do something else in 2 years.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing also is, given the level at which my company likes to maintain its spaces, that it will require a lot of maintenance, and it'll have a lot of cost either way, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's what I'm suggesting is that if you found a solution that was maybe a little more hard surface combination grass, you might find that at least is a more 10-year solution rather than 2.
Yeah, very good.
And I know it's more money. I'm not disagreeing with you there, but I also know the maintenance and everything else will just eat you up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Mr. Robinson, could you talk more to the discussion you had with fire that led you guys down that path?
And I might ask Melissa Branch to come up, but generally speaking, right, I believe when we first measured our hose lengths, we did so from Muldoon or Creekside. Is that right? From Creekside. So the fire truck would pull off of Muldoon, park on Creekside, and we were able to get to the sides of the building, to the back of the building, as well as from the parking lot, be able to get around the other way. And fire simply said, I guess because it's a collector or whatever, that they were not going to accept that, and we needed to provide the ability to reach the full building on site. So we've got this buffer landscaping, we don't have any access. Really the only other, option was to, make the building smaller, which was not
They're
palatable.
not allowing fire apparatus access from Muldoon?
Neither Muldoon or Creekside. Had they allowed it from Creekside, we wouldn't be having the conversation we just had with Mr. Winchester. We would have been able to say, we'll landscape it from the parking lot, we'll create a better plaza area, we'll do all kinds of things. As it is, it's an open access area for a fire truck.
Okay, thanks. No other questions? Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So fire access folks really pushed hard on that, huh? I mean, no sense of appeal or discussion with a committee? I just asked a question. As an architect, this just looks ridiculous to me, and it's a precedent being set that I'm not excited about it being set. either.
I don't think it's a precedent being set. This configuration for a fire apparatus access with grass with grass has been done in Anchorage for 15 years.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
My concern is the requirement for this based on the fact that Muldoon Road and Creekside and being able to pull into the parking lot all seems to me to get you within your 150-foot hose length pretty well. And then to have this seems like that's an over-the-top assessment, and I'm just kind of curious.
Ms. Branch, if you could say your name and spell it.
I'm just more finding out
So-
this whole precedence.
Part of it is because our parapet height, because it's a three-story building, is over 30 foot, and so you have an aerial apparatus fire lane, which has to be 26 foot wide, has to be within 15 to 30 foot of the building. We asked about using the adjacent roadways to meet that, and they were adamant that we provide it on site, and that's part of where that came in, is the hose length and then also that distance and that dimension that they wanted, and it has to be parallel to one length of the building. And so if we did it in the parking lot entirely, like they don't want to count that as our aerial apparatus fire lane because we're more than 30 foot from the building. Otherwise, we would lose that entire front row of parking up against both residential and a retail use. So it was that trying to find that compromise. Fire in the past has allowed it, but in recent dealings with them, both on tracks 11 and 12, they made us do it too. We actually ended up redoing that site and actually having to remove that parking up against the building to be able to have that fire turning through and to meet that dimensional requirement. So it's part of what they're reinforcing now to us.
I was going to say, because this has been allowed before. This seems like a new.
I agree. Until we worked on tracks 11 and 12 and went through that process, we were under that assumption too. And so that was one of the early questions and conversations we had with fire on this because of those other tracks, is that they refuse to allow us to use Muldoon, largely because of the traffic flows on it and the multi-lanes, and then Creekside because it's separated by, there's the island in it, so there's divider between the two directions. Yeah. And so they would block it in its entirety, and the fire staff and the current fire marshal are against it and refuse to even, to let us use it.
So to be clear, it's the fire aerial apparatus that is the requirement.
Totally understand. Yeah. No, I'm with it. It's just a precedent. I'm just letting everyone know this is a precedent being set by the current fire staff.
It is.
That is new.
It is.
And not specifically in any regulations or code, but as an interpretation. And from the standpoint of every architect on the commission here and others, this should be something we really have to, sort of band together and discuss, because again, setting regulation and precedent begins to be that pretty soon in Anchorage, you're going to have 50-foot clear around every building you build anywhere. And, if it's more than 30 feet high. And I think we're setting a precedent that we've got Title 21 saying, let's build higher, let's build more, let's build dense. And then we got the fire department saying, we need 50, 60 feet around every building or we can't do it. Even though there's a main road there at Muldoon, they can shut that off. If there's a fire here, you don't think they're not going to shut Muldoon and Creekside?
Well, and they have acknowledged that in a fire, they're going to use everything to their advantage, and they'll probably
So to turn around and say, well, we're going to use all of that, but on the same token, we're going to grab all the rest of the space we can grab from you.
Yep.
I'm just letting everyone know this is new, and I'm not sure that everyone on the commission understands this. This is a very new thing, and we need to acknowledge that we've got a situation going on. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. I just would echo what Melissa said. What we were willing to do on tracks 11 and 12 that were only senior housing is basically say it's okay. It's okay to basically have drop-offs there and also satisfy fire. We weren't willing to do that in a retail environment. I don't know what the solution is. I'm glad you support our frustration here. We want to get a project built. I don't know if there's one last go, but then this is plan B. I guarantee you that if we had the ability to save the amount of money that it would cost to put the fabric in that open space area, that we would further enhance that open space area for the benefit of everybody there.
Yeah, and I'm just speaking on behalf of we've got planning department people here and everything, and we've got sort of diametrically opposed situation. We've got more density, better enhanced environment, now kind of hitting up against a fire department, new regulation, new situation.
And we usually experience it even more when we're doing these infill developments. I mean, here we actually have a fair amount of space to work with, right?
Exactly, but the question becomes one of, now we're going to go back in and do more infill developments,
Right.
and as a commission, we're going to be seeing these, and we're going to see this begin to set a precedent that maybe needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morse?
Thank you, Chair. May I suggest to the Chair that we attempt to schedule a meeting with the fire marshal to discuss
Sure.
this as an Urban Design Commission on maybe one of our off schedule?
Yeah? Is that something that we could ask him the fire marshal to come down and chat with us, or we could schedule something off-site during the week?
Yeah, I can inquire with them. Who could come and speak to them, or speak to you all. So we might do something, say, at our offices during lunchtime or something? Okay.
Sure.
Let's try and schedule that.
Yep.
I think if I can, Mr. Chair, I think we often find that we don't really uncover the issues until we actually have a real project, right? And then at that point, you get through the project and you kind of forget about it because you've taken whatever path you needed to get the project done. I appreciate that. I mean, I think that we want these developments to uncover issues and opportunities. And so, I can speak both as a member of Procurement Housing and a member of the Planning Commission. The ability to kind of follow through and have those conversations is important.
I see it as a perfect case study to educate from both sides.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something we're missing, but we have a chance to educate them as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Morse.
I had you started discussing about the parking being up against the building and the retail and senior housing. Did you guys consider, or what was your process for not putting parking on the other side where the snow storage is?
If it basically take parking away from the front of the building.
Right.
So one of the things, if on tracks 8 and 9, we actually have parking on the far left side of the, up against basically the other side of the main access aisle towards the condominium development. In this development, we just felt like we wanted parking as close as we could get it to the retail. I know it's in the spirit of the town center and we want people to walk, but I think we believe that our ability to sort of sell the retail space would be enhanced by having some really convenient parking. I think it otherwise creates a nice edge. It gets cars away from that western edge up against the townhouses and provides a little more buffer for those residents. So we felt good about that, and that's just kind of where we actually have. The overall site, when you consider tracks 8 and 9, is overparked. Now, we don't have current retail use at track 9, so depending on what goes there could be, a lot more demand. But our own demand from a residential standpoint is way down from what the code requires. But, that said, as you know, Mr. Chair, you make some decisions and some pros and cons, and that's kind of where we went with this one.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Robinson? Yeah, go ahead, Miss Ferguson. Looks like you're up next.
I'm on?
Nope, Miss Ferguson.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and let Ms. Sullivan speak.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Sullivan.
So just to follow that, so what are you guys doing to promote building placement or orientation that interfaces with the neighborhood street and engages the pedestrian to contribute to public safety? I mean, it seems like we keep turning around and then Muldoon, we kind of let it be. What's your thoughts behind this?
So you speaking specifically to Muldoon?
Yes.
Because I'd actually like to answer it specific to all of the roadways. So for one, if you consider Creekside Drive, by placing that retail space on that end cap so that it both faces west-south and wraps around to the north, and there's clear connection to the entry on that retail space from Creekside, that really was our sort of biggest design intent on how these buildings internal to the town center, how they function. The condition number 4 that we've asked you to consider is this fundamental difference in the town center on Muldoon as compared to DeBar. So on Muldoon, there actually is a 30-foot buffer landscaping strip that was provided in the plat. I am fairly certain that conversations with DOT will never yield, or in a long time will not yield, significant slowing of traffic and recognition that the context changes on Muldoon Road as you go through the town center area. If that were to occur, and if that had happened, we would have taken a totally different design approach. I don't believe that that is either wise, and by what wise, I think having entrances, for example, on Muldoon, first of all, this would be the first building along there that would have it. You have a 30-foot buffer. You don't even have a bus stop immediately close. It's up by the creek. And so to think that that really is kind of the front was not really our premise or our understanding of how the site works. That said, we did not want it to look bad from Muldoon. We want it to look like it's an attractive building, like there is something very different in Muldoon than what you see on the rest of the Muldoon strip, if you will. And with that, that's where the scheme for the landscaping comes from, where we're trying to emphasize the corners of the building. We're trying to call this whole area Creekview Plaza, not just this one building, but sort of demonstrate that it really is three buildings that form this separate area. And so I think, I think that's our approach to Muldoon. Unfortunately, it's not a very pleasant place to be. I mean, we've placed buildings closer, farther up Muldoon to it, and it's just it's a challenge. It's a design challenge. So I think, in short, to answer your question, we think we really do have good interface with the public realm, in particular on Creekside Center Drive. We think the continuous sidewalks along this building, 8 and 9 to the bridge and to the more retail area to the north, eventually, hopefully, to a trail that connects along the creek, which is a property that we own. We hope to be able to provide a trail along the creek there, that you can really create a nice internal-oriented variety of building sizes, densities, rental housing, ownership housing, affordable housing, market housing, and a variety of retail, and then the institutional uses that are there. So we think it works. It's not exactly like I think we all envisioned it 12 years ago, but I think we've made the best of the context.
Thank you. I have a few fast questions. The bicycle rack is right in front. Well, maybe this is just a coordination item. It's right in front the dumpster entry. So that might be challenging, but that's just a coordination note. And then I was looking at the elevations just for windows. And your windows in the bedrooms, at what height you have your sill?
Deanna, do you know?
It's at like 30 inches.
30 inches is the height of the sill.
Yeah, it seems like if you're going to have operable windows, that might get a little dangerous. I don't know how you're going to break them or figure out how they open. But it seems like they need to be adjusted.
The lower portion is fixed, and the upper portion at the standard is operable.
Okay, I couldn't see it in the
Yeah, no
elevation.
worries.
Ms.
Thank you.
Navsker, if you could state your name and spell it for the record, please. Thank you.
Deanna Navsker. You got it? Okay.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to say that it seems like you have really figured out your articulations. I think they are all what the design standards are asking for. I will just want to say that it would be nice and to encourage architects to go to the alternative. We might be able to get better articulations for less cost.
The alternative equivalent compliance, is that what you mean?
Well, yes, because, now all the buildings start to look the same because it's the rule, right? And I know, but I think it would be nice if we as architects challenge the design standards by presenting different articulation options that will create it will help the budget of the project. I think that you guys have some building, I think I've seen it in Muldoon, that has a change in colors, blues, and and I think it's super articulated. And it wouldn't pass exactly the rules, but it's different, and it's cool, and it's very attractive. I just want to encourage architects to try and change that.
Thank you. If I could, Mr. Chair, since you all are really looking forward to these, lunch work sessions with staff, I think all of us would be willing to entertain alternative equivalent compliance processes if they could be done at a level of design that was not 65%. And so, or also required us going back twice, right? So I think if we were able to create design processes that gave trust to the designers to bring concepts forward and flexibility to get to full design within there, I think we'd see innovation. There's simply too much risk in this process that we design a building to 65% and we don't need it. And so honestly, I think it's an opportunity. I said long ago when we created these processes, they should be at conceptual design phases, and we should have those conversations and explore opportunities for our community. We have a paint by number process. I think within that we do pretty good work. I don't want to suggest that Ms. Nafsker is only painting by numbers. So, but I hear you.
I understand. We'll see what we can do from the urban design point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Morse. And then
Thank you, Chair. Before tackling condition number 4, I was noticing on your Muldoon elevation, you only have signage for Creekside Plaza, and because we're talking about 2 retail units on the ground floor, I'm wondering if you see that as true, or if you plan to add additional signage for those retail units.
So and maybe Deanna can correct me if I say something that's not right. We'll have individual signage on the retail spaces, and then there is a sign located on the south end of the building. We actually couldn't place the sign on the corner because there's a significant easement there, and that will include signage, we hope, we'll have a cross-development agreement, common development agreement, to be able to have the signage for these 2 retail spaces as well as the retail in Track 9. And then likewise, the sign that we have along Muldoon at Track 9 would provide signage for these 2 retail spaces. So we'd really be signing, and I just don't know if that other building is going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 retail spaces, but that's the intent anyway, to sign it as one place.
I understand, and I will say from the west elevation, you have small signs, but if we're talking driving traffic on the east elevation, that you're not showing any signs on.
On the building itself?
On the east side, on the
Are we allowed to?
We had not intended to. It'll just be by the monument.
if I could, there it looks like there's in the northeast corner, there's a sign on the building.
It just says
what you're referring
Creekside
to?
Plaza. I'm asking if there will be retail signage,
Oh.
and I'm only bringing it up as a food for thought because you are limited as the amount of signage, but if we're talking about advertising and breaking the trees, and this is why I
Right.
did this first, if we're breaking the trees for those retail, why are we breaking them if
Sure.
there's no signage?
Yeah.
And if there is signage, what is your limitation? We haven't seen a mock-up of that, what those facades look like. Can you fit it in your limitation of signage?
Right.
So just food for thought.
You want to?
Yeah, I do. So Spark Design hasn't been contracted to do any of the retail design, and there are several issues that we will address, or whoever the architect is for the retail tenants will address when they go through permitting. A similar issue is we're not locating bathrooms for them, so you'll see on the first floor it's just a gravel bed. If the retail tenants want signage, they would have to comply with Title 21, the development design guidelines, and any other requirements. So we're kind of taking the approach that maybe the tenant doesn't necessarily want their sign on Muldoon. They may want it just at the monument signs. They may want it on the south elevation. We don't know their wants or their needs at this point.
Right.
So we'll cross that bridge when we get there once he has a signed contract or a letter of interest or whatever it is at that point.
That's kind of why I left it as food for thought, is I know we're not that far, but
Yeah.
multiple signs and the regulations for signage. So tying that to condition number 4, if we're ready to tackle that as a commission, I
We
think,
still have a couple other logistical things to go through, but we can talk about it now, or if you have questions for the petitioner, now is the time to ask those questions.
I do. So reading, I understand the break, and I kind of agree for a pleasant repetition down Muldoon that it's nice to break the trees and show the buildings. So looking at the buffer landscaping requirements in my handy-dandy code book, we're allowed to distribute trees and shrubs evenly along the length, but then it allows for a break for, I think it's easements. But the break still requires you to provide the 2 trees and 6 shrubs per 20 feet. So in this new plan, is that what you were attempting to do, is still provide the gross amount even in a smaller space?
Yes.
Basically, our calculation is we won't be shorting anybody shrubs or trees, but we'd like the flexibility on where they get placed.
Okay. And because we'll be approving the old plan and not today's plan, I would tend to just reword number 4 that you still provide the 2 trees and 6 shrubs. But
Just to clarify that, the question that was discussed earlier with Ms. Ferguson was that the old plan and this new plan are basically the same on the east side.
L201 and L202 match the sheet, the rendering.
The
that you
rendering
got.
that was laid
So
down.
they are correct.
Yeah. So there isn't a discrepancy between what was laid on the table and L201 and L202.
right, but the old L101
Is superseded.
is different, right? So I thought we were told, maybe
And the
Sharon.
new ones.
If I could clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
The landscape plan that's in your packet is the one that you're approving tonight. The one that was handed out tonight, I think it's just one that Tyler had brought for illustration purposes. This is what they were going to do originally, and then we talked more about it, and then their landscape architect revised the landscape plan, and that revised one is the one that's in your packet on page, I think, 125 or somewhere around there. That's the one they're going forward with, and that's the one you're approving tonight.
Okay, to be clear, I'm looking at an L101 I was handed tonight dated 4/3/2017.
You're not approving it.
But I'm not approving that plan tonight.
Let me look, and then I'll confirm the page.
It's really tiny writing.
So the date on the rendering in the package is January 30th, and the date on the information laid on the table is April 3rd.
You're approving the landscape plan that's on page 125, and that one is dated March 27th, 2017.
And we don't have it.
That's L201 and L202.
Why don't you say that? So
We
that
don't have the color.
Okay, so may I clarify? It looks
Yeah,
like
that's
your
fine.
your L101 is an old one and not the one reflected in what was handed out, but the rendering that you received tonight matches the L201 and 202, all the detail of the landscape plan.
So we missed
Great.
the update on 101.
Sorry.
So is that clear to everybody?
Clear as mud?
Okay, so L201 and L202 are what we're approving, and we should modify the conditions of approval on staff packet number 1 to eliminate L101.
Is it the
What's the answer?
Hi, I'm going to clarify this
Sure.
one last time. If you look at L1.01 on page 123 of your packet, there is a stoop outside the mechanical room doors. And prior to this submission...
Hold on, sorry, I'm trying to get to what sheet?
123.
123.
Okay, roger that, okay.
Basically directly smack dab in the middle of the building on the west elevation to the left of the text that reads Track 10 Creekview Plaza, there's a stoop outside the double doors there. If you have that stoop outside your double doors, it is the exact same plan that you were laid in front of you. I printed from our submission from the website, and I have pretty good eyesight, and I still see 4032017. It may just be the copies that the effects of a copy machine that you all can't, that it got blurred. So, does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
To be clear, we did switch it out right after submittal, so that's where the confusion comes in. We had
The full-size plans that we have that were submitted are not current.
L101 is not current, L201 is.
Right below UDC submittal, L101 UDC submittal, that is the obsolete one.
Correct.
The correct one says 65% documents, which is this one right here.
Which was laid on the table.
It's the one sheet. So just like
It says 65% documents.
Okay.
I got it. So the one extra one you gave us tonight is correct. Yep, so 65%. I got
So the L101 is superseded in our packet to what was laid on the table tonight. And we could, Mr. Robinson, we could take a break if you'd like some clarification.
No, I'm not, we clearly had a swap out, and I don't know what got swapped or what didn't. I want to make sure that we have the right document. So what we submitted tonight was intended to be consistent with what we thought we had also swapped out to, but it sounds like we have an old 101 in some of your packets,
Correct.
right? So
what was laid on the table is what you guys would prefer to be the L101?
yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, well, hold on. Is that clear to everybody on the commission? Mr. Sahel?
It's clear, but I'm frustrated.
Okay.
My
noted.
poor old eyes, I always go to the nice big copies that I get from the applicant.
Yeah.
And I spent my days reviewing these, and now I'm told these aren't current. And so I don't think it's a problem tonight, but I will share my frustration with staff at the end of the meeting. If we have a substitution, I would sure like to get substitutions of the full size delivered to us.
Prior to the meeting is your,
Well, I don't have a problem with this little clarification. I have no problem with
Okay.
that. But I have a problem with the main packet that I reviewed
Yeah.
is not current. I have a problem with that.
okay. Thank you. Duly noted. Okay.
So that's my frustration. We can get back to
Thank
item
you.
number 4.
Yeah. Did you have, Ms. Ferguson would like to say something. If you didn't have anything else, Mr. Robinson.
No, I don't. We're just here for questions, standing by.
Great. Ms. Ferguson.
Yes, I'm not even aware that there's a change in the landscape plan. The one
I'll show you the glaring difference between these two plans.
Yes,
Is
but what I'm
exactly
saying is this one that was laid on the table tonight is not one I've reviewed.
Okay.
And so that's my issue with this one. The one I reviewed is the L201 and the L202 dated in March. This one's now dated in April. So I haven't had an opportunity to compare the two against each other.
This L101 is what you provided in the staff packet. The applicant gave us the wrong L101 and replaced it tonight preemptively.
Okay, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit caught off guard with this, and
I think what Ms. Morse just said, if I may, is the page 123 in the staff packet is consistent with what you all have. I think what I heard Mr. Sahel say is the original submittal has the original document, and that did not get switched out. So, but this clearly, Ms. Ferguson has seen this because it ended up in the staff packet, right?
Yep.
That's really interesting. What caught my eye was the on L101 on our packet, the nice color rendering. It has a shared patio labeled where the fire lane is, and what was laid on the table tonight, and which is also in the packet, does not.
yeah, the shared patio is an older version of this. That's what they wanted to do originally, and had changed it from that shared patio to a sidewalk connecting the two properties.
Okay, so now we have that cleared up. Ms. Morse, did you have something else? Another question?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Chair, to the petitioner, the mechanical room, now that we're looking at the nice white spot on the west side of the building, those double doors open onto a stoop with grass. That's where your main equipment's coming in and out of? Is that something that, it's not a code issue, it's just a maintenance issue? Has that been discussed and? It's just glaring at me now.
You want to talk to it?
So this was a choice, a design choice. It's not a code issue, it's not a Title 21, it's not a design standards issue. I guess the design guidelines do prefer that you screen mechanical as much as possible, so with the intent of that, it's a door that will never be used right by the main entry, right in front of all the parking. And the serviceability, hopefully they're not putting new RT or new air handling equipment, boilers, et cetera. But it was something that was requested as a change. Initially, this had all been connected to the sidewalk that was also attached to the dumpster area for ease of maintenance, but it just shifted as a coordination item request. So
Staring at it, so I had to ask. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one further curiosity and question about the windows along Muldoon Road. Are those dealing with the sound issues of Muldoon? Have you dealt with that yet, or are you going to? Just looking at the sound issues with the windows, are you going to triple pane? Are you going to do something for sound on Muldoon just because of the...
Currently, for cost reasons, they're just the double pane argon filled, what's required to meet AHFC 5-star plus. So,
Which is the...
double paned argon filled.
No, I understand. But that doesn't deal with the sound issues off of Muldoon.
No, it's not a triple pane window or anything like that. What we did do, especially for the residential units, was to raise them above Muldoon Road to help mitigate the noise, the traffic, and the unwanted passers-by, being right outside bedroom windows, living room windows, et cetera. But it's affordable housing, and cost is always of utmost concern, so.
Just and again, a minor suggestion is to do even a minor sound analysis around on Muldoon Road, and the suggestion of the windows, and I think I brought this up on the earlier housing there, and it's only that side that you would need to go to triple pane, but boy, it would make a huge difference, and I've done that on, we've done that on other projects, so. And it's not a demand, it's just a suggestion, because it's not going to get quieter on Muldoon Road.
Thank you.
I had a question, if it doesn't look like there's any in the queue right now. Typically, we see a plant schedule that shows sizes, and there are not sizes indicated on here, so it's not clear on the sizes if it meets code.
Yes.
And just to go a little bit further, the L201, L2 series calls out a container size, and it references, basically a nomenclature, and the nomenclature is not in the plant schedule. So, it's clear to see what's being planted, but it's not clear the size, and a lot of times that is important.
Mr. Chair, I had brought that up with the design team earlier, and they're aware of it, because I noticed too, and the plant schedule didn't have the sizes on it. I think the landscape architect worked around it by doing it actually on the landscape plan, showing the sizes there. I noticed there were a few trees where she hadn't indicated what the tree size was, but overall, I think it was indicated. But yes, she is giving container size rather than, height to the shrubs.
Right, and so the question is that in compliance with the code?
That's why I asked, made one of the conditions that they come back with a final landscape plan to show me, and I was going to check it at that point.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are requesting to modify that condition, right?
No, there's no
You're not?
request.
Okay.
That's condition number 5.
Roger, okay. Great, thank you. Ms. Ferguson, looks like you were going to say something else?
Yes, please. When I saw sheet L202, I thought they included it, no, let me back up. When I saw sheet L101, I thought this one is one just to show the overall site and what the landscaping was, sort of on one sheet. And the subsequent sheets, L201 and L202, the detail sheets, were really the guiding documents of what they're planning, because obviously there's more detail there. Whereas the rendering that was laid on the table tonight, I mean, the boulders are missing from it. A lot of the shrubs are not seen. I think they're there as well as I can look through the rendering. But because of the rendering, you can't see whether the shrubs are all there or not because they're covered up by the color. And so so what I think we'll do, if the commission is agreeable, that we'll sort this mess out later. And but it's my understanding that the detail landscape sheets are the ones we're going forward with.
Okay, and have you guys considered or discussed bringing it back on the consent agenda for approval at the next meeting?
Oh, we could if the UDC wishes to do that. Sure, that's fine.
Have you discussed that with?
No, we haven't discussed that.
Okay.
And there's one other thing I wanted to mention regarding condition number 4. And just a little bit more background on that one. It's Title 21, as Ms. Morse had pointed out, says because they're buffer, it's buffer landscaping, and on the Muldoon side of the road, it's buffer landscaping, and the trees and shrubs are supposed to be evenly distributed along the length of the bed. And so we don't want to depart with Title 21, but at the same time, I was weighing the development and design guidelines that were created specifically for Creekside area and weighing those against and the AO is also, I think, speaks to it a little bit too. So trying to weigh those against Title 21, and so in the end, I decided that trying to balance out those two and giving the preference given the preference of the petitioner, that we'd weigh more towards the AO and the design guidelines.
Okay. It's unfortunate your landscape architect isn't here tonight.
Can I follow up, just to be clear?
Go ahead.
You support the substitution of condition number 4?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. I was lost. Thank you.
Yep. On tracks 8 and 9, Mr. Robinson, and 11 and 12, there's a distinct difference in the planting along the edge. And the distinct difference is the line of deciduous trees. Aside from that, the foundation plantings is a bit mirrored, but the concept is distinctly different. And your guys' reason for that, even though you mentioned it in the narrative, is to show visibility to the retail.
The gaps in the evenly spacing. Mm-hmm. The type of tree, honestly, that's...
No, I'm not worried about the type of tree. It's the single row you'll see is there on all 4 projects, and also foundation plantings with in those 4 cases, the corners are covered, but you could easily mirror that with what you have here. But I think the same thing could be accomplished, and we'll discuss it later, but with a distinct linear tree and this similar package, and then it would meet the intent. And are you guys on board with that or not on board with that?
Well, I mean, the way that I understand, this process is that we're being asked to meet the code. Mm-hmm. I would love to take suggestions as design suggestions as that, not as as conditions. It doesn't, in my opinion, I don't think that. But I think that you probably have a good point. I honestly, my expertise does not extend itself to specific landscaping. So, be something that we would look at. I think where I hear you going with some of this is our intent. Obviously, is to get through approval so that we can move to full design as quickly as possible. Literally, as soon as we're done here, we want to be able to press press the go button. So I think if there's a request to somehow come back rather than just deal with staff, which was the condition itself, we'd ask that be specific to the landscaping and nothing else related to the building. Is that fair? Because I think we need to design this building to get it in for permitting. I think we can have a little more flexibility on getting, if there's another look at a landscape plan because of some of the confusion that occurred. And then, like I said, some of it feels like Mr. Winchester's suggestions on windows. They're not code issues; they're good design suggestions that we will take into account.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, so you have 4:39 left for rebuttal. So we're going to open up, unless you had anything else right now.
No, that's good. Thanks.
Yep. So, it's this part right here. Okay, so now I'm going to open the hearing to public testimony. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to testify, and besides the design team, there is nobody here. So since there is nobody coming forward, Mr. Robinson, you have 4:39 for rebuttal.
Chair, Commissioners, again, thank you for the opportunity. I think we have complied with the vast majority of design requirements related to Title 21, the adopting ordinance of the Creekside Town Center, as well as the design guidelines in Creekside. I think the confusion here this evening was related to a swap out that didn't occur in your original packet, but is clearly indicated in the staff packet. I heard several legitimate design suggestions, whether it was access to the mechanical area or windows or the consistency of landscaping that I think we will for sure consider as we go through with this project. Our intent, normally I would love to be standing in front of you in about November at this stage. So here we are. This was a very last minute addition that we had the opportunity to develop this lot that is owned by Northram Bank and add it to a development that includes 38 new senior housing, 38 units of senior housing on tracks 11 and 12. And so that explains some of our timeline being a little different. The advantage or the benefit to Cook Inlet Housing and the community, we think, is 18 more units and some mixed use, and the completion of the south end of the Creekside Town Center. So I apologize for something that feels a little bit rushed and urgent, but that's the sort of behind the scenes view as we also try to piece together a development that is up in the air related to things like unknowns related to the tax code and other fun, enjoyable things that actually affect our development as much, if not more, than the design process and permit process. So we're confident we're going to get this thing done. We're confident that it's a good addition to the community. We appreciate your review, and we will do what we can to sort of clarify. Again, it is in the packet. I apologize for the confusion here this evening, but I believe what I heard is that we're on the same page. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. And with that, we'll close the public hearing, and then now we'll go into what the wish of the commission is. We have case number 2017-0045, major site plan review for a proposed 18 residential unit housing, mixed-use building rather, at Creekside Plaza on the table right now. Looking for a motion for approval. Thank you, Mr. Sawhill, and seconded by Mr. Winchester. Mr. Sawhill, will you state your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval. Where am I? Case 2017-0045, a major site plan review for a proposed 18 residential unit mixed-use building at Creekside Plaza, subject to, get the right page, staff conditions 1 through 3. Condition number 4, as proposed by the applicant tonight, to read, in order to provide architectural interest and enhanced visibility on the ground floor, retail spaces, clustering of trees and shrubs shall be allowed in accordance with Creekside development and design guidelines and the special limitations. Quantity and species of planting shall conform to Title 21. Condition number 5, as stated by staff, I am intending to delete condition number 6, and then the condition number 7, as stated by staff, would be renumbered to number 6. And if I may speak to my motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I intend to support the motion. I guess I would commend the applicant and their team for a very complete packet. I always enjoy Melissa's submittals. They're very easy to follow. I like the table she provides. Following all the design guidelines, I get so confused, and I'm glad I'm not an architect as far as all the residential design standards and sorting those out. I really like the elevations. I think you guys did a great job on those. The site is pretty constrained. I'm saddened by the fire lane, but that's what we have. And maybe that's something we can work on. I support, I guess, some flexibility in landscape design and clustering of plantings to enhance design. I think our code is very limiting. I wish we had more options. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure we have authority to do this, but we're doing it anyway. And so we'll just go forward. I guess that's all I have. I guess I'll also add, I would concur with staff's analysis of the conditions and standards and would adopt their findings as mine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sahel. Mr. Winchester, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I likewise am going to support the motion. I guess I had one question for Mr. Sawhill. You weren't deleting condition number 5, or were you?
No, condition number 5 is part of the...
But you were deleting 6?
Deleting 6.
Okay. I had a little moment of misunderstanding there. Thank you. And I too am going to support the motion. I think it was a great packet. And I think conditions are generally met through the architectural standards. I would also reiterate what was said during some of the Commission's statements, that we'd sure like to find a way as an architect to not continue to develop projects that all look the same in Anchorage, and I think our standards do that, unfortunately, and we'd like to work with you, not against you, as Cook Inlet Housing Authority and, as architects and other architects on the Commission, to come up with a way and a process. So if that's something we can do, I'd really like to avail ourselves of that, because I think otherwise we're going to end up with a cookie-cutter building across Anchorage, and we're all going to step back in 10 years and go, oh my God. And so that said, I would encourage also, as we mentioned, a couple of those other comments, sound and some other things to take under consideration. I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winchester. Were you making additional conditions, or were those just general statements?
Just general statement.
Okay, thank you.
Support for the project.
Roger that. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or suggestions, conditions? Seeing and hearing none, I will restate the motion. So the motion we have on the table is a motion to approve case number 2017-0045, major site plan review for 18 residential unit mixed-use building at Creekside Plaza with conditions 1 through 3 as stated in the staff packet. Condition number 4 to be amended to read, in order to provide architectural interest and enhance visibility of the ground floor retail spaces, clustering of trees and shrubs shall be allowed in accordance with the Creekside development and design guidelines and the special limitations. Quantity of species of planting shall conform to Title 21. Number 5 as written, number 6 deleted, and number 7 as stated in the staff packet. So if we could get a vote, please. Thank you, and that motion passes. So you guys have an approved plan. Thank you for coming in tonight, and have a good evening. All right, next one on the list is... nothing.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
I had something.
Sure.
I just wanted to respond to Jim's comment about the clustering of landscaping. Particular to buffer landscaping, the reason why it doesn't allow the clustering is because it's often meant to buffer between incompatible uses, and that's why you don't want the ability to cluster in those cases, while there is other types of landscaping where you're allowed to cluster. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
I think although we're, if I may, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Although we may be overstepping slightly, this is kind of the gray area of the code that should be allowed, right? So that we can do the right thing for the city. Maybe we are overstepping.
But see, this would also applies to projects that don't even come to the UDC, by right. And a lot of those, if they were allowed to cluster landscaping in areas where you've got two incompatible uses and you really don't want the clustering, they would be allowed to do it. So in trying to look at all possible cases, bad development as well as good development, it's trying to, write a code for all of those situations, which is near on to impossible.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Regarding the design standards, I think maybe I could write a letter asking if there's a different process that designers can submit earlier without having impact, and then we'll review it, and if you guys like it, I think it will help a lot, Anchorage, in how it looks.
Be a code modification, and I think it would be
Well,
worthwhile.
there's a current one, but it's an administrative.
Well, if they can go and review the design prior to coming here, so they know they're going in there, in a very early stage.
You're saying design?
Yeah.
Or sign?
Design.
Okay, sorry.
In an early stage.
Yeah.
So there's opportunity for architects to do the alternative design, so we can get a more diverse city. So I'll write a letter, I'll bring it next time I'm here.
Sure.
And we'll read it, and if you guys agree, then we can submit it.
Sure. And I think to the point on the landscape, I don't know that we're necessarily overstepping our bounds, but certainly tracks 8, 9, and 11 and 12 have accomplished, I think, the filtered and the buffering. Obviously, tonight there wasn't any buy-off on trying to make that similar, but I think as you drive by there, you'll recognize that, especially on 8 and 9, and they're built right now, that it somewhat screens it and also meets the intent, and it's not clustered. But food for thought. Anything else?
You cleared our speaking points.
What?
Did you have something you wanted to say, Ms. Morse?
Oh, Ms. Morse, I cleared?
You did.
Oh, Ms. Morse.
Did we want to talk further about the work session with the fire marshal? Or is that something we'll do offline?
No, well, I think Ms. Ferguson has a task to get in contact with the fire marshal, and then they'll figure out a date to meet, and then either it'll be after a meeting, or it'll be on a lunch on a Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday or something.
I just wanted to make sure it was someone's action item. Thank you.
Yes. I'll bring it up at the next meeting, too. Thanks.
I had one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
You cleared me.
I did.
So I just wanted,
The next guy, too.
Mr. Robinson brought up a point that's come up. The DOT quarterly design meeting, I had a fairly heavy hand in helping Terry talk about how, things need to come to the UDC well before 65%, because we have a huge say in how a site plan is going to be set out, and then we have a huge hand in how a road project meets the comprehensive plans. And so I'd like to figure out a way to, that's probably a code change, it is a code change, that the UDC should see things well at the concept stage. Obviously, for federally funded projects, it's up to the DOT to scope those things, otherwise they don't get their funding, but a lot of their projects are state funded, so by grants and such. So he brought up a good point, coming here at 65%. I mean, that's a pretty expensive, you've put a lot of time and money and investment in that, and then for us to come and say, oh, we need you to rotate it 180, and tonight you didn't get that because it was a beautiful packet, but how can we address that? Can we address that?
Yes, through the chair. Those are two really good questions. And previously, because we recognized that coming at 65% was late in the process. And so some of you that have been on the commission a long time remember when UDC was a two-step process. They came at about 35%, and then they came again at about 75% to 99% for the final UDC review. And then when we were looking at the new Title 21 and hearing comments from the design community said they don't want to go to the UC twice. They think it's too onerous, and they just want to go once. And so then we're left at, well, you got 35%. 35% design can change so much between 35% and the end product that they'd be approving something that we really don't know what ultimately it's going to look like. So we sort of struck a middle at 65%, and it's a one step. So that's the process. Certainly there's room to reevaluate how we can make this process, work better. And so that's that. And then it's curious you should mention the road projects, because project management and engineering is working with a consultant now to rewrite context-sensitive solutions that governs road projects. And so we are looking at really a close look at that and how we can make the whole road project review improved over what it currently is and has been.
And I understand there was a meeting yesterday that I missed because I was in training, so I did miss that. But I'm happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the right answer is, because you're right. A lot of people put in 35% designs that are just lines on paper. 35,000 foot level. So I don't know what the right answer is, but having someone change something completely at 65% doesn't make sense. That being said, there is no submittal between 35 and 65. So, does anybody else have an opinion on this?
Ms. Morris, I saw it, and she raised her hand, so apparently it's on topic.
I did have it.
My opinion would be, and maybe the applicant, as an example from today, could give an opinion if possible. If we let the applicant choose when to submit between 35 and 65, and then they would be taking the responsibility that if there were major site changes where planning thought another review is required because they moved the building or they changed the parking, then they would have to submit a second time. But that would give them the opportunity that at 35%, if they were comfortable with their plan, they could bring it forward.
Mr.
sorry,
Winchester, go
yeah,
ahead.
and that was exactly what I was saying, is, the problem we're dealing with is one size fits all.
Right.
And that's not the case. Here we have a situation where these guys probably would have loved to have come to us at 35% design to get all the basic decisions out of the way, and then come back even for a quick review, even at 95 if they wanted to, or whatever we needed to do to make sure they didn't make any changes. But then we have other projects that really want to get to 65% because that's where they need to go. And I think we're unfortunately trying to enforce a doctrine that's one size fits all, and we're not giving the developer the opportunity to say, maybe I do want to come in at 35% and take a look at this before I invest as much money as they've already invested. And in fact, you can still see that these are like barely 65% because they're right on the edge of really even putting in all of her manpower into this until they get the approval. Where if they'd had an approval at 35%, they'd have blown the doors off to get things going. So I would actually ask you, Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, if I may, two comments, one on the road, one on this issue. We've created this really complicated code process, right? And it really assumes an urban context all over Anchorage, which is mostly not the case. It's mostly wishful thinking. And you can't just snap your fingers, make the new project sort of suddenly be urban when the entire context, including the road itself, doesn't even comply. It just doesn't work. I believe if we really want to talk about specific areas of town for design, then we ought to talk about some general guidelines and overlay districts that talk about setbacks and access and things like that, and then generalize more the code required design guidelines, which to me, I honestly don't even know if I should be talking to you all about them. This is site plan approval. I have to comply with that stuff to get a permit anyway. There's no value added here. There's just risk for me. Do you know what I mean? Because if there was value added, it would be, hey, let's try something different. Let's move it around. Let's actually relax these design guidelines over here that are making us do things we don't want to do anyway. You bless that in exchange for knowing that the building's going to be in the right place, it's going to function, and it's going to add value. So if you have the ability to let it go both ways, like, yeah, we'll approve it, but we'll also kind of exempt you from certain areas that really make you do some pretty silly things because it treats every place the same. So I don't have an easy answer. We made a lot of decisions when we went through Title 21. There isn't a project that we do that we don't run up against something that it is making us do something that we don't want to do, and not just because we don't want to. We actually think it's the bad thing. It's the wrong thing to do. So and it's all based on trust. We don't have a good track record of trusting the development community with someone sitting in we just don't have that as a community. I'd like to think that we could test it in certain parts of town. Why did we have design guidelines here and then still have it meet Title 21 on top of it? We already had design guidelines in the Creekside Town Center. Why layer another thing on top of it that frankly is potentially opposed? We made it overly complicated. If I may, because I'm interested in your feedback on the road issue. I did get an email from PM&E wearing my planning commissioner hat saying we'd like to talk about road projects going to UDC rather than Planning and Zoning Commission. And so my view, and I haven't had that meeting, it should be frankly a meeting where we have representation from UDC, not just Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission just really wants to know general context. How does this fit in the zones of honestly, I don't want to get into designs of roads and specifics of sidewalk. Lori knows, she sits next to me. I don't want to deal with that stuff. You all might. That might be within your purview. You're made up a lot more of designers than we are. And so somehow there's a process where we weigh in on the very high level context and then step out of the way. And then at some point we treat public projects the way we we beat up public projects pretty good too, to the point where I think, I don't know if I don't want to give DOT a pass all the time, but sometimes they deserve a pass, or sometimes the city designers deserve a pass. So anyway, I'd be curious on your thoughts. I think there's probably more of a sharing of workload there, as long as I think commissioners still get the, hey, what's the high-level stuff? What's the network? Where are the main, I don't mean the main street, but where's the street that is a good ped and bike street within a neighborhood, knowing that they all can't function that way because we don't have enough money to do all that, right? So how do we know that there's at least enough of a network? That would give us, that's all we want to do. And then you guys get into the specifics of the design. So those are my two comments. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments?
Let's go home.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice out, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Robinson,
Thank you.
for coming in. Thanks for the dialogue. I do have one other thing. We'll have a new member next month. Mr. Cohen will be joining us. And I don't know where he's going to sit.
So are we
Just a heads
complete
up.
now?
Yes, we will be complete.
So how many
don't
are
know.
we supposed to be? With Mr.
that?
Cohen will be complete.
Yes.
Oh, that's sad, because we just
if-
had an application of Barbara Cash, and I think she would be great.
She just sent one in?
Yeah.
We have enough architects.
Ed?
She's not an architect. She's
ahead.
not an architect.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes, we are complete with Mr. Cohen. That'll be 9. And as far as his background, he works for, I want to say,
State?
it's for federal,
BLM, maybe?
I want to say parks.
Lori's telling me BLM.
Yeah, BLM. There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Great. You have a motion to adjourn? Somebody? Push the button. Thank you, Ms. Ream. Second. Ms. Morse. See everybody next month. Thanks.